Hello and welcome to Now in Zen. Today we have Melopœia on the podcast. They are a collective of three people, Brian Leong, Jon Lervold, and Dave Tremblay. And the three of them virtually have created the hugest Xenharmonic black metal project, I think, to ever exist in 26 tone equal temperament based on J.R.R. Tolkien's writing. They put out a huge album a few years ago and they are working on another one. Welcome, guys. It's great to have you here.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
So I think maybe the first question I'd like to ask you guys is just, what are you?
I started the project, I don't know when, but a while ago. And at first I was alone in this and I only had like VSTs and all of that. And I had a thought one day of like turning text into music, but using microtonality to do it, stringing like every letter to one step of the octave.
Right.
And I did that with 26 tone. So 26 letters in the English alphabet. So that's how it started. And I found VSTs that could do microtones and all of that. And I released the whole album. And I decided to take the Silmarillion's first chapter to do that, just because, I don't know, I like nerdy stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, so after that, I thought, you know what, it's cool and all, but I want it to sound, more real, more like a real band. So I decided to, well, on the first album, I talked with Brian, who did vocals for the whole thing. And thank you for that, because it was amazing and must have been pretty, I don't know, wild. I don't know. But you'll have to explain your thoughts on that. I want to know too. So for the second album, I reached out to Jon. I don't remember why, but I think we were friends on Facebook or something, and I knew you were doing microtonal and weird stuff, and you were great on drums. So I'm like, hey, you wanna try something out? And he said yes. And so that's how we went. And I got a microtonal guitar from Ron Sword, metatonal guitars, I think.
Yes.
And that's just, how it went for the second album. We're still tracking. Um, I'm hopeful that I'll be done tracking the new album this year. This is a very long process, but it's very fun to do. That's basically how it is right now.
So I actually also know Jon from some of our conversations about trying to create software based on notation in equal temperament and all of that kind of thing. So maybe if each of you could also sort of give an explanation of like your musical background and where you come from and what interested you about microtonality, that might be kind of a cool piece of background information to have as well.
Okay. Who wants to go first? I guess I'll follow. Dave talked a lot. So before I get into that, I guess it makes sense to talk about how the project started as well. Just a little bit of history with the first album, the Ainulindalë. So I actually come from a different space. Like I'm not part of the microtonal or even experimental scene at all. I am a solo black metal songwriter and guitarist. It's kind of the melodic, raw bedroom project. And I had started writing music seriously around like 2014, 2015 and releasing albums, but I wanted to do more vocal work. So I was trying to join bands or join projects, and I was looking online, and I see this post, and it says, looking for a singer for a experimental microtonal, and most importantly for me, J.R.R. Tolkien project based on the Silmarillion, which I had just read maybe like a year before. I don't know if that was on the Metal Musicians subreddit or like the weekly r/metal promotion thread or something like that, but I reached out to Dave and then we linked up, and everything kind of just like we were both equally interested in making the project work.
That's so cool. Yeah. I don't even remember that part.
For me, I started playing music when I was 12. and I grew up in the Bay Area in California. Had a really great like screamo metal hardcore scene that I was a part of. Played in tons of different bands. I've just kind of always been into aggressive music. But I make a lot of like solo projects in a lot of different genres, and I also collaborate with quite a few different people as well. Dave and I had worked on one project before that was also very extreme, like black metal, very technical kind of stuff. Yeah, when it comes to microtonality, I got interested in like 2016. There was a friend of mine, Blair, who plays guitar in Invalids. Great math rock band.
Oh yeah, really good.
Yeah, they were attending Berklee College of Music and studying with Dave. I don't know his last name. He's the guy who plays guitar on micro jazz. Yeah, phenomenal musician. But yeah, Blair showed me just a couple of things when we were on tour, and I was just blown away because I never even considered that it was possible to do anything outside of 12. I just thought, oh well, those are the notes, But I had plenty of experiences where I try to write something and it would be like, oh, halfway between this note is like what I'm hearing in my head. But if I play this one, it's too low. If I play this one, it's too high.
Oh.
So it was really enlightening when I found out that, it was possible to make music outside of that could sound really cool. So yeah, Dave asked me to play drums and sent me the first track. I said, this is right up my alley. And here we are.
So Brian is on vocals and Dave is doing guitar and Jon is doing drums. Are there other things going on, such as synths? Who's doing the mixing? Like, who's doing the composition? What's everybody's role?
I play guitar. I'm actually a bassist at first, so I'm really bad at guitar. So I usually just track very short like amounts of time and then just glue it all together. And also because it's so, I don't know, it's so wild and unconventional that it would be like, I don't know, I don't know if anybody could like remember all of that and play it all, continuously. It's very strange. Like, it's not like you said, the Mercury Tree, that they have more of a riff or a song structure or something.
They have like choruses and verses, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I just followed like the words of the book. So that's how, I choose what to play. So that's why it would be very confusing to play live. But I also play bass, and I kind of refretted a fretless bass using plastic tie wraps. So that's how I do bass for that album. And then I just shoot the track to Jon and Brian, and they come up with their magic.
I get Dave's, he sends me the guitar and the bass, just raw, no processing at all, just DI, and a click track. And the click track is usually like in 4/4, even though the actual measures usually aren't in 4/4 at all. But no like meter map or anything. So I just kind of go with what I hear and just imagine drum parts, and I'll notate everything out a lot of the time, like on a whiteboard or something, while I'm going to be tracking, and all the time signatures that I'm going to do moment by moment, and just play through it, and then eventually have something, and then we'll shoot that off to Brian.
Yeah, so we just pass one segment from each person to the next. Jon gives me like a rough mix of the instrumental track, and all I get is a single WAV file. There's like no notes or anything. There's no like hints or text on what I should sing where. So that's what I really like about it. It's we take foremost the musical approach, and so when I get the song, I approach it as a piece of music. I just listen to the track blind. I don't look at any of the text, and I'll just listen to it a few times and try and figure out what each section is supposed to be. Then after that, I will pull up my copy of the Silmarillion, and then I'll do the official like playthrough of the song and kind of figure out how I'm gonna work each line or each segment of text into the music. So it's kind of a difficult process to explain, because I think part of it is just from having worked on, 2 albums already by now. So like the Ainulindalë, which was I think in terms of, Dave will have to explain if, or correct me if I'm wrong, but that project was quite a little bit more rigid in terms of like the conversion process between text to music. So it was quite straightforward on like, okay, this section is clearly this sentence of the text. But on Valaquenta, it's a lot more free form. So I get to kind of do whatever I want. And it's a lot of reading the musical cues. I think the most important part about like making the vocals sound good is to know when to not sing, because there'll be some super rad sections where there's just like a sick lead, or some part where you just gotta let the riff play. And I just kind of work around these segments and basically try and create something that sounds like a really good song, but also respects the text, in a way that is appropriate.
Sharing your process, it really surprised me. Usually in this kind of thing, I'm thinking that there's one person who maybe dictates how everything goes, but it really sounds like the three of you all kind of have an equal stake in the sort of composition. So it kind of starts with Dave, and then you have Jon, and then you have Brian. Is it almost always in that order in terms of how the tracks are built, or is it sometimes different?
It's pretty much the same. I just start with guitar, or maybe I start with bass, but it's always like that. And then I ship it to Jon, and then it goes to Brian. But I can, elaborate on what Brian said about the first album versus the second one. At first, I had like this idea of converting text into music with microtonality, so 26 tones, but it was much more, rigid than now, in the way that every letter and word had a part to play in what chord I'm playing, and the succession of notes, and also the chords, how do you call that? The tone center of the chord,
Yeah.
and also like the rhythm. So all of that was dictated by text. So my personal input in that was in ways of arranging these parts. So eventually I created a program to do that because it was very time consuming for me to do it. But at first I would play the chord. So the chord was basically all the letters that are contained in the word, like spread onto the octave. So this is the word chord.
Right.
And then the bass would be the first letter of that word, and that would be the tonal center of the chord. So you could have like multiple different words, but if they have the same letters inside of them, they might not have the same, tone center, a root. Yeah, that's the word. They don't have the same root. And also, like, if a word has like 5 letters, like that's a 5/8 chord. So it lasts for 5 units of time. And all of that was like arranged, and I used like VSTs for like orchestra, and like fake guitar. I just used like a distorted piano because I was too poor to buy like fake guitars. And yeah, so for the second one, I wanted to be like less restricted in that way. So I just treat, I guess, each word as like a tone row, but it's like a 26 tone row. And like each word is gonna like highlight the letters in that word in that, tone row.
Oh,
And
okay.
I get to use these notes however I want. So that's, much more liberating in the way of, songwriting and all of that. And I basically usually just go through, sentence by sentence,
Mhm.
and just, I don't know, get the feel of the sentence. Is that like more harsh or more melodic, or I try to get a vibe from it, and then go with the riff, and it's pretty much automatic. So I basically just try something, and if it sounds good, I just keep going with it, and all of that is chained, and it makes the song in the end. And basically each song is a paragraph of that chapter. So that's how things are split.
So it seems like creating that way and putting letters of a word into music, like, you know, you said you're less restrictive in the second album. It seems like it would still be awfully constrained, I think, in some situations where you have certain letters and then because you don't have other ones, you don't get like melodic passing tones or scales exactly. Do you have a way to work around that, or is it just like those letters only? Like, how strict are you with adding other passing notes and things like that? Or maybe you find that some words actually give you more scales than you might expect. Because, you know, I've tried this with words a lot, and you get a lot of like jumping, and then you get some words where, you know, the notes aren't in a row because the letters are all from different places and stuff like that. What's your experience with that sort of phenomenon?
I'm usually pretty strict with myself on that. But I remember at least one time I just, continued to use one letter throughout the sentence, even though it wasn't in some of the words. That's artistic liberty, I guess. But yeah, usually I'm pretty strict and try not to use notes that are not in the word. Sometimes though, I'm gonna harmonize like the notes. So maybe in riffs, I'll play the fifth or what sounds closest to the fifth in 26, or the tritone, which is a perfect tritone. And that's pretty much all the leeway I get.
I actually have a question for Dave,
Yeah,
if I
let's
may.
go.
So you say 26 tones. I've always wondered what you've done with, or what you've not done when you see punctuation, like in a sentence, like a semicolon or a dash, because Tolkien uses a lot. He splits almost all his sentences up pretty much every time.
Yeah, so in the first album, it was integrated into the music. So like a comma was, I think, 1/8 rest, and a dot or a period was a full rest, a quarter note rest. But for the second album, I didn't keep doing that. I just go with the flow. But usually, like the way I'm writing, usually I'll just it's a bunch of riffs or passages strung together to make a song. So each sentence is sometimes a lot different from one another. So there may be some rest between them, but it's not accounted like in the first one.
I also want to know if the choice to do 26 was entirely based in the fact that you could map one letter to one pitch class, or if there's like some other kind of rationale there as well.
No, it's totally just that. Very practical reason.
When did you know you had to write music based on J.R.R. Tolkien? Are all three of you big fans of Tolkien?
Yes.
I've never read the book.
You've played it.
Feels like I'm cheating. I'll read it at some point, but I haven't yet.
Oh yeah, you gotta read it now.
Just read the lyrics. I don't know why I chose the Silmarillion. Maybe I just read it recently when I had this, a kind of weird idea. And I thought that the Silmarillion is like this, beginning. It's like the genesis of Tolkien, especially the Ainulindalë, which was the first album. And I found that quite fitting and interesting too. And even for the second album, I tried, to find another author that I would put into music. And, I couldn't find anyone that would fit so well, at least in my mind. So I just went with the second chapter of the Silmarillion. So
yeah, it is my favorite work. So I felt pretty much obligated to join the project because it's, in a way, it's kind of a tribute.
it's so good.
It felt like it was something that was, necessary for me to do and be a part of.
What are some other bands and projects that have inspired each of you?
Yeah, I mean, there's Jutgate. That was like first time I heard microtonal metal was them, or I think it's just one guy. And thought it was quarter tones, but it's like, there's a lot of potential here. I'd love to hear some other stuff. But yeah, there's not a huge amount out there that I'm aware of other than quarter tone stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in terms of like outside of metal, there's definitely, many awesome names in the community. Definitely like Sevish was one of my gateways.
Gateway drug.
Hmm.
Thankfully, I just sing, so so it's a little bit looser for me. But on the latest track that we finished, I did try to follow one of David or a few of David's leads, which is not easy, as I found to sing microtonally. For me, it's like the most experimental thing I listen to would be Isan and his solo works, and gets pretty diverse and far out there. Well, lately, I think his music is a little more, I guess, rock influenced or less on the, especially compared to like Dustin Breakin or Aramita. But for me, it's just as simple as drawing from, if I want to scream, I'm gonna try and, if a section sounds like a band that I know or like, I might try to invoke a singer that I like. Isan being a great example. The cleans on the latest track we finished were definitely, taken from him. So these are the things that I would do. But, again, I'm from outside the space, so I listen to more just traditional black metal and heavy metal music.
Yeah, Brian, I was about to ask you about, I think, just the challenges of singing in 26 tone equal temperament. You mentioned that you had a lead at one point. Is that kind of like not a normal occurrence for you in the process? Like, are you usually just using your ears? Like, how exactly does it work for you?
So in the past, before this song, I didn't really introduce clean singing. So this was really my first attempt at like trying to bring clean singing into it. So, and normally I would let those lead sections play out. So I wouldn't perform over them. Generally in the, for like the early tracks, my perspective was, let's try and establish, like work out how we're gonna go through this project. Since we're releasing successively, it's like each track kind of builds upon the previous experience, and we get better and better as we go from song to song, which I think is awesome. So if there's a formula, it's more simplistic. So anytime I hear a blast beat, it seems kind of inviting me to either scream or growl or something like that. And if there's a clean section, then I'm more inclined to either do spoken word or like some kind of whisper, like an Agalop type of approach to those sections. I think as we move forward, I want to kind of break the formula more and more and try and get weird and play around with different ideas. And the nice thing is we just kind of figure it out from song to song. I will say I did like Dave's description of how he approaches writing his riffs and his melodies, because it's not different from how I do it. I get this music and I'll listen to a section and I just try and figure out where the words fit. I do get a lot of help from Tolkien himself because his writing was quite poetic. Like sometimes you'll go through a line and, like I was saying before, he breaks up the sentences into commas, and then like that sentence, each segment rhymes. So naturally it just makes sense to sing them as if they're, different bars, even though like we might not necessarily be in like 4/4, as John mentioned earlier. We might be in a weird time signature. But what I'll do is I'll just listen for regular, kind of typical things. Like if I hear a drum fill, that would indicate that a section has ended and that I would be ready to start the next vocal line, something like that.
So do you upload tracks from that just kind of like periodically every once in a while, and then eventually the album has all the tracks?
That's how it's supposed to be, yeah. So just as we finish them, I'm just uploading them to the Bandcamp. And eventually it's gonna end this process, this endless process.
Yeah, I think we've been doing this for 3 years now, maybe more. We've got what, six songs finished. We're making our way through it. It might be a while, but
Wow. It looks like on my Bandcamp it says that there's 5 that are released. Title sequence, Introduction Part 1, Introduction Part 2, Of the Valor Part 1, and Of the Valor Part 2. And then Varda is the one that I have listened to as a file that you sent me.
Well, I think you can maybe I think I like the first one, it just how the second project started. and I really like how like energetic it is and just wild.
Yeah.
And but all songs are I like them all. Maybe you guys have a favorite one, but
By first you mean not the title sequence, right?
mean the title sequence.
Oh, the title sequence, yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a little minimal on vocals.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
That's I think like so far the one we just sent you is my favorite.
It's got so many moments where it seems like it's going to settle into, like, the feeling I get for a lot of those, like with the roots, is that it's going to settle into a 4-chord loop, but it doesn't. However, it's still drawing from the same vocabulary in such a way that it seems like some kind of logical scale is used. Interestingly, I also don't hear that many. I'm wondering if any of these are present, and if you can fill me in. It seems like this would be difficult to find in a word. But moments, I don't hear many moments where like you have one note and then you have a note a 26th of an octave higher. Not a lot of those very small microtonal inflections that I'm like hearing in the melody and stuff like that, which is interesting because I think a lot of people maybe when they think of microtonal guitar music, they might think of using those small steps, but then, and some people decide not to use them as a conscious choice, or it may be a part of the process. I think I noticed a few like maybe little like slides and things going on, but nothing like that.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a bunch of letters that are, just one next to the other. And I use them. I don't, I'm not scared to use them, even though they sound like 126 is just like they sound like out of tune octaves, basically.
Yes.
So, but I still use them, and I think it's pretty cool. But when you get 2 steps away, so like 1/13 away,
Yeah.
it gets pretty close to a regular guitar or a regular piano. So it gets really close to the intervals we're used to. It's just a little, a little softer, maybe a little lower. And
Yeah.
it's kind of cool to play on that too, because I've said I'm playing like the fifth, like the fifth chords and all of that, but they're not fifth, they're like out of tune fifth. And I think it's pretty cool.
Right, yeah. I think that this style you're writing in, it really works, and I think sometimes it's hard to make it work because if you have like noisy distortion and chords that don't lock into like close to justly tuned intervals, you might get something that can sound too noisy to really like hit hard or be effective or whatever. But I think in the track that I just listened to, it sounds really natural. If I divide 1200 cents by 26, I get 46 cents ish for like 26 tone equal temperaments EDO step. And if you're singing and you're like 20-ish cents off if you miss in either direction and you don't get like dead on, that's like right in between the pitches, but it still sounds like the note. So you're starting to enter this territory where like you're breaking the fabric of what's perceived as a note. And I think that's so cool. In particular, I really love tunings where if you have a triad where the major third and the minor third are like a really small distance away from each other. So 22 tone equal temperament does that really well too. So I find 26 to be very category breaking. It also has intervals that are in tune from a purely numerical perspective, like in terms of getting the JI intervals like 5 limit thirds, and then you hear the notes in a scale and they sound really out, and so they kind of give you like some of the flavor of neutral seconds sometimes. Like that first part in Varda that I heard was so cool because it's like there's like some note that's going down and it's like going to the 7th and then the 6th, and then the 6th is like really flat in terms of like where the melody would be from a 12-tone perspective, but it sounds in tune, like it sounds concordant. You just have to like get used to it.
With Monway, 12 Varda, Lady of the Stars.
That's so cool. You have like a more knowledge than I think all of us concerning like the theory behind all of that. You know, I'm just like more of a practical approach to that. And
Right,
I
yeah.
like, I like dissonant music, like John talked about Jude Guide earlier. That's,
Yes.
probably the first metal song or band that I listened to that played microtonal music. And that definitely was like, oh, hey, this can be done, and I want to try it, And so when I had that, idea of like 26 tone, I'm like, yeah, let's try it out.
Yeah.
So I got the guitar that I mentioned. It's
Oh,
a
yes.
7-string, I think Ibanez,
Yeah.
and I wanted to talk about like how I put the letters on the octave. So it's not like straightforward. It's not like A, B, C, D, and all of that.
It's not in order.
No, it's not in order. I'm like, this is not gonna make sense if I do that.
It's so funny how little we know about each other's processes in this project.
It's like three black boxes.
Beautiful.
But I looked online at like the I think statistics of what letter pairs are like the most frequent in the English language and all of that. And I put those pairs at good sounding intervals.
Oh, very smart.
So that's why you get like I think some of the most common pairs are like TH and I think HE, or there's an E there. So like whenever there's the word the on it's like a very bland. It's a very bland chord. It's like it, and in a way that makes sense because
Right.
you don't want your the to be like very dramatic or anything.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Like a filler
I
word.
think that made sense, and I'm like, okay, let's do it that way. And some words they have like that very dramatic dissonance and all of that, and some other words that are maybe more dramatic in terms of being a word, but they get a bit tamer when you put them in a chord. I don't have any example right now, but that happens.
I mean, yeah, in theory, like if you're doing that, then when you encounter names that are written in a made-up language, then you're gonna get these wild like dissonances, right?
Yeah.
So that's why when you hear like a name or of anything, it's usually like extra. There's like an umph to it. Usually the
Yeah,
name
there
is
is.
Melkor.
Yeah, Melkor. And strangely, like Eru, like the big god, like it's like they have like a 26 tone interval. So they're like the E and the U is just like one note apart. So that's very, very dissonant to the point that it sounds like out of tune. So I don't know if yeah. I don't know if there's something to draw out of that. Like does it have a deeper meaning in the lore of Tolkien? Who knows?
So Dave, I have another question for you then. How do you map those tones? Like, do you have I don't know, like an Excel spreadsheet of what fret maps to what
I do.
given note? You don't keep it all in your head.
No, I do because I don't remember all the notes. Like I don't remember all of that, but I do remember most of the more common ones. I know the big string is like a W, and then it's U, E, O, V. It's I, and then the ninth one is A. And then I think the 13th is an H. And then it gets a bit blurry, but that's, most of the more common notes that I hit. So usually I just like read a word, go check my spreadsheet. Okay, so and then just try to, put my fingers on the right notes. And usually it's just like these weird chords that, you should have like 6 fingers to to play them correctly. But, I'm like, okay, let's try that. And yeah, that's basically how it goes.
Do you guys use a lot of multi-tracking in the sense that, like, I know this is like a virtual project between you, but I get the impression that you want it to sound like, theoretically, if you were all together and performing live, that you could play this. Are there any tracks that use Brian screaming overdubbed 17 times and then 20 guitars a split second later or something?
Well, I'm just sending Jon like one track per instrument. So like there's 2 tracks of guitar,
Yeah.
usually a lead and a rhythm part, and then maybe a clean, but they don't like overlap usually. Maybe I've done that at some parts, but it's very not common.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
my
the
answer is
majority of the
no.
material could be played with 2 guitarists and a bassist.
Yeah, same with the vocals. The answer is no. I send a single track. I mean, sometimes like if it's a clean section going into like an extreme section, then maybe like the clean will pull in while like another scream starts, but it's just a single track for each. Well, I break it up, there's the scream track, the growl track, the spoken track, but it's very, very performable. Well, in a physical sense.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
drums, oh my God, imagining like memorizing all of this stuff.
Oh,
Same
yeah.
for the guitar, man. That's impossible to memorize. Maybe we could do like one song and that's it, you know?
The time changes. Yeah. I mean, we would have to like fix the tempo or something like that. That would probably make it a little bit more doable.
In Varda, I caught a lot of 10/8 and some overarching like 7, like maybe like 7/4 as ingredients. But it kept changing in a cool way. I thought that was so great. It was almost like I want to do this. I sometimes do this in my music where like I purposely will like establish some mixed meter and then like I pretend like I'm someone listening to this for the first time as an attentive person. Like, how long does it take me to figure out the pattern? And then that exact moment I change it so that it's not the same. And it seems like you guys, I think, have done that in Varda a little bit. Perhaps not with that like method in mind, but maybe because it seemed like you did something like in the middle section that was like in 10/8, and then right when I figured out it was in 10/8, it went back to being in 4/4, and then did something else. I thought that was neat.
So like I feel like the drums really like establish the meters and probably don't match up with what Dave has in his head when he's recording this stuff sometimes, I'd imagine. Um I like I just try to listen to like the phrasings of the instruments and how they're like overlapping with each other and just like count out, like I just cut it up measure by measure and just go entirely based on what I'm hearing. And like I try not to overthink it too much. And yeah, I mean, I usually feel like it ends up flowing pretty well because I try to just like really be very intuitive. And while I'm playing too, like I don't necessarily know every note that I'm going to hit, but I know the timing of every part. And if I like know the timing and pay attention to the signature, then usually something flows out that works with what's being played on the other instruments.
What do you guys think is the most difficult track you've ever been sent as part of this project? Where you got something and you were just like, man, I don't know about this one. I gotta really work hard to get something that works over it.
That might be this one. I mean, like I heard it and I thought, okay, this is going to be great. But just the length of it, it's freaking gargantuan. And like I was saying before, just trying to memorize like that much stuff is really, it's a lot.
Yeah, I would say this track, and my reasoning is when I listened to it, I knew this was gonna be the one I was gonna sing clean, and I knew that was gonna be very difficult. So there's a lot of like recording the same line over and over again, probably up to like 50 times, and not, layering them as you
I know
suggested
that
earlier.
feeling.
But yeah, and also just trying to sing a line to something where the tempo is not steady. Because I won't cut up an individual track. Like, I'll sing in segments, probably the same way Dave plays his riffs in segments, but I won't sing something and then like split it to quantize the timing or anything. I'll just keep singing it until it's on time. And then because there's the melodic element as well, because that's what makes this track so much harder, because now I have to sing following the time of the song as well as be in the pitch that I want, which is not exactly diatonic or anything that I'm used to, that I've ever done before. So that's what made this one particularly challenging.
I think 26 is definitely surprisingly strange for a diatonic tuning, and there's lots of things in there that can really trick your ears. I also wonder what the most Xenharmonic word you've encountered is, because Dave, of course, you've engineered the cipher brilliantly, such that common words usually give you the chords you want. When we're talking about Eru, are there any chords or sonorities you got from really, really strange words that just like irreversibly changed you as a person? You can't go back now.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot of words, and they're all very different. And I don't know if there's one that struck me, but I think I like the Melkor one.
And thou, Melkor, shalt see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me, nor can any alter the music in my despite.
For what it represents first, but I think it's a chord that sounds cool.
Yeah.
And it's not out yet. Oh, there's one that I really liked the beginning, because I went a little bit jazzy with it. Track 10 or part 10, one of that. I think it's the title is But an Instrument.
But an instrument, I see it. I love that moment where he goes, but then he said, what an absolutely great chord.
So when I say take musical cues, that would be something like if I hear something that kind of invites itself, especially if there's some kind of meaning in the sentence that can be contributed as well.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great example. What are some other examples of that? Where you took a moment where you used your own reasoning that we could like hear in the music, maybe.
Steve, you asked about like an example where the text, I try to turn the text into something that follows the music. So on Varda, somewhere in the middle, there's a line that goes, and if Manwe is with her, Varda hears more clearly than all the other ears. So I sing this clean, but mid-sentence, there's kind of a transition in the drums and the riff gets a little bit heavier. The line following that is the sound of voices that cry, which I perform in like kind of a mid, guttural-ish scream.
The sound of voices that cry.
And these are kind of things that I try to work in. It's not always possible. Like the song has to tell me what I can do, but when it's there and it lines up, that's when you've struck gold.
Yeah, I love those parts. Your clean parts, I love them so much. Like when I heard that, I was like, man, goosebumps. That was crazy.
Yeah, and that's mid-sentence. So, in an earlier track, I might do a full sentence like one way and then not switch until the next, especially on Ainulindalë, where there was more structure. So it's clear like this sentence is this section, so I'm going to sing it within the confines. But with Valaquenta being a little bit more freeform and musical, like it opens itself to these opportunities.
Well, right now, I'm looking at my DAW and I'm like, I've tracked over an hour and 16 of material for that second album. And I think we're nearing the end, but I don't know how far we are exactly.
Right.
I'd say maybe there's like 30% left. So that's going to be a huge album. It's going to be so long.
Wow.
Like, it's going to be a challenge to listen like to the end.
We had some trouble at some points with what orders the songs were going in as a result of like the way we were labeling things. So we have a couple of tracks where the instrumentals are like entirely done that are a little bit down the way from where we are now. So there might be a burst where we put out a few at once, and we aren't, I think we've been averaging probably like 2 tracks a year or something like that. And a lot of that is me and just all the stuff I have going on, but it's like it'll be exciting once we get to that point where we get to drop a whole bunch of them without much delay between them as we usually have.
And actually continuing that story of the where we kind of mixed up the tracks. One of those tracks sounds really good, but unfortunately it's the wrong paragraph sung over. But magically it kind of like worked out. So like I couldn't tell that I was singing the wrong track because like kind of the number of sections lined up and like there was nothing that was obviously to me that we were doing it in the wrong order. But yeah. That's a pretty good story. It's not the first time actually. I think it also happened on the previous album where it's like, is the first track or is it like the second track where we've done that before. It does
we did it with the very first song where you did some
right,
vocals on it also with this one.
It makes
twice on this album.
It makes re-recording it easy though, because I already kind of know what the song sounds like. So it's just a matter of fitting the correct words into those slots.
We might have a blooper reel once the whole thing's done.
Like alternate takes.
Well, thanks for joining us today. You can check out Melopœia on Bandcamp, where they have got the albums, and they are, with the second album, I think their process is that they are just releasing tracks as they are finished instead of releasing the entire album wholesale. So keep a lookout for Varda and the rest of the tracks. And we'll catch you next time on Now and Xen.
Thanks again so much.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Very fun.
What a cool meeting of the minds. Adios.
And nice to meet you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody.
Good learning experience. Nice to get an idea of what you're actually doing.
Exactly.
Perfect. Bye.
All right, bye.
Everybody. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Now in Xen. You're listening to the new track Varda from the latest album, Valaquenta, by Melopœia. A huge thanks to our Xenharmonic patrons as well as the Xenharmonic gods, Jun Dai Bates, Kobashigawa, Naren Rattan, Mike Battaglia, Adam Freese, Matthew Sheeran, Vincenzo Cicarella, Hector McGuffin, Christopher Bailey, Leland O. Weigel, Amy Coleman, Jill Weigel, and Tina Harmon Carteau. Catch you next time on Now in Xen.